Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Mindset Monday. I'm really excited to join you today. We are talking about how to create study habits that stick. I can't tell you how often CPA candidates come to me and say, I've been at this for multiple years. I have sat down, I've started to study for whatever reason, life got in the way, and haven't been able to make it through all four exams. Maybe haven't even been able to make it through the first exam, and then they finally come to me for that additional accountability, the additional support to hopefully this time make it all the way through the finish line. And so if you're struggling with something similar, being on this repeated pattern of getting started but not being able to finish, sort of falling off track, and having to get yourself back motivated, maybe weeks, days, weeks, months later, years later, this is a great topic for you. So I'm going to share with you 5 things that I find get in the way or cause people to fall off track with a study plan. In other words, get in the way of them being successful and having a sustainable plan, which is really what we're going for, right? We want to have study habits. We want to have an approach that sticks, something that you can stick with, something that is sustainable, and most importantly, something that you can stick with without a ton of effort or suffering on your part. You could stick with a crash diet, eating minimal calories, having no sugar, no gluten, no, all that stuff. You could do that and it may be easy for you, but for most people, something like that, that's super rigid, super strict, is not going to be sustainable, is not going to be something that they would be able to stick with at all, let alone do so without a lot of suffering. And my goal when I work with people on the CPA exam is to hold you accountable to what you said you wanted, which of course is to become a CPA, but also to make that process as enjoyable as possible. Not only enjoyable, but also fruitful. So I talk about a lot that you could go through this process and you could suffer the whole time. You could just try to survive this process of studying for and passing the CPA exam. You could do what we call white knuckling it, where you just grip it so hard, you try so hard, and you just stay uber focused the whole entire time, cut everything else out. You're just literally trying to get through it. And you will. You will get through it. You're likely to pass the CPA exam that way. You'll end up with those 3 letters behind your name, which was the goal. So that's great. But the other side of this, the other opportunity here is that you can actually thrive through this process. You still end up with the same result, you becoming a CPA, having passed all of the exams. But in the process, you could learn a lot about yourself. You can form good habits that not only help you with the exam, but will carry over and be help you to be successful in your career and in your life, and really learn about how you handle stress, how you operate under a goal setting framework. So to me, if you're going to have the same outcome either way, where you become a CPA, why wouldn't you go through it in a way that gives you something else in the process? A way that is not so stressful and painful and just burdensome. Of course, I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. But if you're on the path of suffering and struggling and that's just what works for you, by all means, then who am I to get in your way? I absolutely would never. So, what I want to share with you today, though, are the 5 things that do get in the way and cause some of that suffering, cause it to be painful, cause it to be unsustainable, and share with you the things that you can do instead to have this be a process where you not only survive, but thrive and have a more positive experience on your way to CPA. So, the first thing that I find gets in the way of a sustainable study habit or study habits that stick is not having a clear purpose. So, mostly for tip number 1, I'm going to refer to you back to another video that we did at the very beginning of the year. I'll link it below, where we talked about having a vision for your ideal future. It's really, really critical that you pause, no matter where you're at in the process, and start to think about why you're taking on the CPA exam. This has to go beyond that you're doing it for your career progression. That's an obvious side effect, really nice benefit of the CPA exam. But here's the thing: We know, and neuroscience actually tells us that adults only change sustainably. Adults change in a sustainable way, in a way that we are able to stick with if we want to, truly want to, if we feel that we need to. Those are the only two scenarios where adults create sustainable change in a way that they don't suffer. Now, adults can also create change if it's something that they feel they ought to do. For example, something that your company is mandating or that your boss told you that you have to do. But that's where the suffering comes in. That's where it's likely to be a temporary change and not a long term sustainable change. You're going to hear me talking about this a lot because I think it's so important, especially with the exam that tends to be something that is sort of mandated on us by our career. So it's on you to take it a step further, to tie it to what it is that is important to you, what you want. We go into this in great detail in this other video. As I said, I promise to link it below. But the main thing for you to recognize is that it has to be tied to a big why. Motivation is one of the things that I find throws people off track. We want to have this sense of being fully motivated every single day, and we're kind of relying on that to bring you to your desk to study each day. But motivation is something that you generate yourself. It's not an external force. You've got to be motivated. Those external forces are unpredictable, and you can't just rely on that and sort of be along for the ride. You've got to be able to get yourself going every single day in order to form this into a sustainable habit. So start to explore that further, why you're doing this, not just for your career, but how could passing the CPA exam be a vehicle for all of the other things that you want in your life 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? How is this going to be one of the stepping stones that gets you closer to that ideal reality? So that's number one. The big thing that gets in the way is not having a clear why or a clear purpose beyond just it's something I have to do. That have to do is not going to lead to sustainable change. Number two, biggest thing that gets in the way is having a plan that doesn't fit you. So, in other words, I work with a lot of candidates that come to me and say, well, my colleague said that I should be doing this. My colleague passed the exam by doing only multiple choice. And a lot of times, candidates are trying to fit themselves into a box, either the box of what worked for somebody else, what they perceive to be the thing they should be doing in order to pass the exam. And the biggest mistake that you can make is having a plan that simply does not fit your life. Here's a good example. If you know you're not a morning person, why would you schedule your studying in the morning? If you just know about yourself that you do better work, if you worked in college late into the evening and that's when you got a lot of your productive hours out of your day, if that's what works for you, go for it. On the flip side, if you know that you're not reliable to cut yourself off from working at a certain time, or if you're at that stage in your career where maybe don't have a lot of say over when your day finishes, and the only reliable time you're going to be able to get studying in is in the morning, then we should be studying in the morning. Don't try to fit yourself into somebody else's plan. So take the time to think through what's really going to work for you. There's another component of this that we'll talk about it coming up, but it's really tied in. So maybe we'll just dive into that. But first things first, with this plan, let go of the judgment, let go of the should haves, the should, I should know how to do this. I should be able to study 6 hours a day. I should study in the morning. I should, forget it. Figure out what's going to work for you. I guess on it, just because I said it, I don't think anyone should have to study for 6 hours. Study for the amount of time that you can be fully focused. Again, don't worry about what other people are doing. If they're studying for 3 hours at a time, good for them. If you need to study in 3 1 hour chunks with an hour break in between, and that's what works for you, great, do it. If you need to start out studying for an hour a day or 30 minutes a day and build up your stamina, your study endurance to get to a 3 or 4 hour weekend day, okay, great. Do that. If that's what's going to help you be sustainable, that's more important than going in really hard, doing 6 hours a day for 3 days and then burning out and being off for a week or two and having to get back started. If you had just done a little bit each day or a few hours a day to get started and build up to that, you'd actually be further ahead in the long run. So just make sure you're not trying to fit yourself into somebody else's box or falling victim to what you think you should be doing. Okay, so number 3, letting things get in the way of sustainable. So a few of the things that I think are of major concern are, really setting unrealistic expectations. So what are the things that are getting in the way of your sustainable? Things like pressure, perfection, feeling like you have to get everything absolutely perfect, maybe expecting yourself to get 100% on sets of multiple choice before moving on. That's not sustainable or realistic. Maybe having an all or nothing mindset, that the only way you're going to be able to pass the exam is to focus 100% on studying, maybe work and studying, but never allowing time for social activities or rest and relaxation or reading or any of the other things that recharge your batteries. So look for and sort of evaluate your study approach, maybe how you've approached this in the past, for things that are unsustainable. And really look for things like this that are you're not going to be able to stick with for a very long period of time, just like that crash diet. The other thing that I find some people do is will use studying as punishment. Not a great approach. Have this be something that you want to do. Something, again, tied to that ideal vision, tied to your big what for. But we don't want to use this as something that you have to do. Or I didn't study yesterday, so no, I have to study for 6 hours today. No, you've got to study for as long as you can produce good quality studying. And then you need to take a break. So I think the main message in these first 3 biggest mistakes is to be watching for where you are judging yourself, where you are trying to fit yourself into somebody else's ideal scenario, and instead give yourself a little bit of a break. We want to have, again, consistency in your study approach. We want to form good habits, but part of that is giving yourself flexibility and a little bit of space to figure out what works for you. Okay, number 4, not having a clear plan. So this is where, now when I said give yourself a little space and a little bit of grace to figure out what works for you, you might be thinking, oh my gosh, but I'm not reliable. That just means, I'm going to give myself a break all the time. So the thing to counteract that is to have a really clear plan. So you want to know, for some folks, they don't need detailed, organized plans of everything they have to do each day. But for you or for other people, you might want actually more detail. So at a high level, you want to set targets for where you want to be in the content at least each week. Some individuals do better on a shorter time frame. So you may want to set targets for what you want to accomplish each day. That way, you know what you have to get to. You can easily see, am I on track with this plan? Am I falling behind? Where am I at? What do I need to do? So you want to, I think the biggest mistake then is having ambiguity in your plan or just having an unclear plan altogether. Consider, again, what level of detail, what level of structure is going to work best for you. If it is a weekly target or if it's daily. Some of my clients will go as far as to say, each day I want to do 20 multiple choice and 1 simulation, or I want to be through these 3 sections today. That's the focus. And then again, you can just focus on quality over quantity. If you get through everything you were scheduled to get through today and it only took you an hour and a half, then you're done. Or you can go forward. You can try to get ahead on some things. But again, it sort of alleviates that pressure or this feeling that you have to sit here for 3 hours or 4 hours, again, leading to unsustainable change. And then finally, the thing that I find that is probably the biggest culprit of causing people to burn out and fall off the study wagon and not be able to sustain their study plan is not taking days off and not having any balance. I highly recommend taking a day off each week. If you were training for a marathon and you were running every day, building up the miles just like you are studying, You're growing, you're stretching your brain, you're requiring more of yourself in terms of brain power and energy every single day. If you were doing that in the context of a marathon, you would take days off. You would scale it back. You would maybe cross train or just take a day off completely. Same thing should happen for the CPA exam. You want to give your brain time to rest and process and absorb the information. You want to have time to go and do those other things that recharge your batteries, that get you ready to go into another big study week refreshed and have you be more productive with your study hours going forward. So make sure to incorporate days off and make sure to incorporate the things that do recharge your battery. So if that's time to play with your kids or get together with your nieces and nephews or friends and family or get to the gym, get outside, um, stretching, yoga, it could be anything, but whatever those activities are that are important to you that make you feel good and energized and ready to take on the week, those are critically important, just as important as squeezing in another couple of hours of studying. So I know it's a tendency of candidates to think, well, if I spend 2 hours doing that, those are 2 hours that I'm not studying. And the reality is that by doing some of those things to take really excellent care of yourself, you can actually come back stronger and more ready to learn, more ready to absorb information, and just overall have a more productive study session the next time you sit down to study. So, all right, just in recap, number one, make sure you have a clear why for why you're doing this, what's in it for you, how this CPA exam is going to get you closer to your ideal future, way out in the future. Have some fun with this. Think about where you want to be in 10 to 15 years. And go check out our other video about your ideal self and that future vision. Number two, make sure it's the right plan for you. Don't try to fit yourself into somebody else's plan. That's one of the quickest ways to have it be unsustainable for you. Setting unrealistic expectations is number three. Make sure that you're not, again, trying to force other people's approaches on yourself or setting unrealistic expectations, things that, where you have to be perfect in order to pull this off. Give yourself some flexibility, give yourself some space. That's just going to create a better environment for learning. Number four, having a lack of a plan or sort of ambiguity or no clarity about what you need to accomplish each day or each week. You get to decide how detailed that plan is for you, but I really invite you to look at, again, what works for you, what level of detail do you need in order to be able to stick to this plan. Make sure you incorporate time for unexpected things, right? That sort of goes to the unrealistic expectations, is thinking this is all going to go smoothly every single day. Make sure you build in some buffer days for if and when something unexpected comes up or you run into a topic that you really need more time with, build that in. And then finally, no balance. So make sure that you're incorporating days off and time to do the things that really fill you up so that you can come back stronger the next day. Make sure to join us again for another Mindset Monday next week. And in the meantime, if you have questions, feel free to drop it in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to our channel. And if you have things that you really want us to talk about, send them in the comments or send me an email. I'd love to hear from you. And can't wait to join you again next week. Have a great day.